Testing, testing. 1, 2, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3. Brewster, greetings from the grave. Don't look so surprised. Did you know that your great-grandfather was a hunky? My old man married twice. One wife, white, produced me. One wife, black, produced your grandmother. Checkered family, you might say. I've outlived them all, Brewster, except you. They're telling me you're my only living relative, and I have to say, I'm disappointed. Look at you. What have you made of yourself? A failed baseball pitcher? I believe in being honest, Brewster. No bullshit. I'm stuck with you. But we're gonna have some fun. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Zoe. It's spelled Z-O or Z-O for those of you outside of the U.S. Welcome back, friends. This is the 153rd episode of Backlook Cinema, the podcast. We take a look back at the movies of yesteryear, especially the movies of the latter half of the last millennium. If you like what you're about to hear, then tell your family, tell your friends, and tell that eccentric millionaire who's just handing out stupid amounts of money about our humble little show. Now, folks, I like to have interesting and incredible guests on the show, and I want you to learn about these people. I want you to experience these people. I want to share their world with you. And my next guest is the beautiful, the ambitious, the talented, and the total package. She effortlessly crosses the boundaries of film, illustration, and photography, and she's extremely nosy, and she will get up all in your beeswax if you give her the chance. Up next, host of noseyAF with Stephanie Graham. Friends, please welcome Stephanie Graham. I'm sorry, I missed that over the applause. Say that again.
Oh, I was just saying thanks so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Oh, I'm glad to have you. I'm glad you're excited. I'm excited too. And I'm glad to have another artist on the show. I too am an artist. I've dabbled in it a little bit. I don't draw
Dabbled.
Yeah.
Please, your work is great.
I'm glad
a little
glad
more
you
than
like
dabbling.
It. Yeah, I'm glad you like it. I don't draw as much as I used to. I remember when I was younger, I was like drawing every day. Drawing with pencil is like my main medium, but lately, when I do draw, I'm doing a lot of computer art. So, and when I say computer art, I mean that I have a program that when I draw with it, it imitates like ink and pencil. So it's the same thing. I'm just not using paper and carbon pencils or ink. And for me, I like that because it's easier to do revisions. It's easier to like erase something and then draw something else. And I'm not using a whole bunch of paper. You know, it's just a fun way to create work. And then sharing that work is a little less cumbersome. You know, I can just put it online instead of trying to take a good picture of it and then uploading it onto a computer and then sharing it that way.
Yes, a sustainable approach. I like it.
Yeah. So what's your main medium? Is it pencil, oil paint, ink? What are you usually working with?
Actually, photography and filmmaking are like majority of what I do. It's like the base of what I do. And then outside of that, it could go into installation, like creating like little environments, but mostly photography and film-based work.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know how to draw at all. I wish I did. I try. I was thinking of even taking a class, but like I never really flexed that, and I want to learn even just to like sketch out ideas. If I'm like, hey, this is what I'm thinking about, to like make so people can understand. Like, but I'm not. I don't know how to draw.
Okay. I thought I saw some drawings on your website. So you didn't design your the podcast.
Podcast artwork? No, I did not do that. That was done by Emma McGoldrick.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
she's an illustrator.
That's pretty awesome.
I love illustration and drawing, and so that's why I thought, similar to you, like not want to have to take a picture. I thought, if I have my podcast artwork with like a beautiful illustration, maybe this will go longer than me having to like always set up a photo of myself or think of a way, like some of those pictures of like all that, for like podcast artwork.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
just like, no,
Well,
I like I roll with the illustration.
right. There are a lot of people that do use their own photographs in their when they do their podcast art, and I do that with when I have guests. Like I on my main podcast art, what you call it? I don't even know what the the art the artwork that I use for my podcast is just the logo, and because I really get into graphic art design. And so that's what mine is. But there are when I have a guest on, like since I'm having you on, I'll be using your photo. That's part of the artwork for the episode artwork. So
Yeah.
I don't know if I've never had the urge to put myself on the podcast artwork.
Yeah, me either. And I remember when one time a woman who was a podcast consultant suggested I put myself on there because she said if there's any time when someone needs to pull some type of like diversity playlist of podcasts, they could see that I'm Black.
Right.
And I'm like, but then it was sort of wild because her podcast artwork, she sort of looked like she was just like overly like cheesy. And I'm just like, if I have to look like this, I'm not interested. You know,
it all kind of depends. It depends on the brand that you're making. So it's it's a matter of taste, I should say.
yeah, some of them it does look really nice. Maybe the next iteration we'll see. But when I was like trying to really figure out like, oh, what the artwork would look like, I just thought, okay, I'll take the idea of using me on there, but I don't want me on there, if that makes sense.
Right, right.
Did you draw your logo then? Did you make that with the film strip?
Yeah, I did that.
Oh, okay, that's cool.
Yeah, the program I'm referencing when I say I use computer art, what is it called? Clip Studio Paint. I think that's what it's called.
Okay.
It used to be called Manga Illustrator, but then they changed the name and it's bought out by another company. And the reason I like it so much is that I paid for it one time and I don't have to keep paying for it. So but it was back in the old days when there weren't a lot of programs that were subscription based. So this was I bought this like 10 years ago, I think. And it works well. It just like, it never stopped working well. And they're faithful with the updates, I guess, to keep up with the like new operating systems or whatever. So I've never needed to like, I never had the urge to buy a new program that would end up being a subscription. That would bother me if I had to do a subscription.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's perfect. When you can get a one-time fee off of a product that you love, then I'm with that definitely, because it all adds up for sure. The monthly cost of everything going monthly, like give me a break. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So I made that on Clip Studio Art, and that's what I mainly use for like when I'm doing graphic arts for like if I'm doing something for what you call it, I guess something that that's mainly drawing. If I'm mainly drawing, I'm using Clip Studio Art. But now I use Canva for most of my for episode art, for YouTube art, for anything like that. The YouTube thumbnail, I'm using Canva because it's for graphic arts. It's really easy to use, and it's like a quick and dirty way of putting out artwork.
Oh, definitely. I use Canva all the time. I really like Canva. Yeah. They're really like coming up, like I follow a couple of like Canva artists on Instagram or people that are always showing you all these tips and tricks and stuff. And I'm just like, wow, y'all are really getting down with this thing. Like before I would just use it for like something quick to do like a text based. Like I just recently made something before we got on here to talk in Canva about like my website. Like I was switching from Squarespace to Podpage, and like now it's down because of all of this stuff. And so I was letting folks know. And I just quickly whip that up in Canva, and it's like, boom, it's cute. You can put your brand, your colors in there, and it's like ready to roll.
Right, right. It's like click, click, click.
Adobe has a version of that too, but yeah, I just feel like Canva, I really love when Canva got started that they were like, hey, we know that not everybody is designers, and we know that y'all need nice design. So we got y'all,
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. And I really like that. And it's so wild to see like how it's expanded
yeah, yeah.
since. Yeah.
So, being in the art world, you learn obviously about art galleries and exhibition. How did you learn about those things?
I think just by, going to art shows and museums and having an interest in art as a kid, and then wanting to be like, oh, I want to do that. My father was really into films, um, and would take me to films and like show me films. And so, going to things like that. And then also just in class, they just expose you to art. And I remember actually at church, there was a girl who had taken a photography class. And because I did not know how to draw, like in, like kindergarten through eighth grade, like the art classes were like predominantly like drawing based, like drawing, painting skill set. Um, and this girl in my church group, she was taking a photography class. And I was like, that's not drawing. I could do that. So, you know, so then like, yeah, taking photography classes, they introduce you to other photographers. If you want to see the photographer's work, you got to go to the museum to see it. And so you just sort of like learn of these spaces, and just learn more. And I thought, I want to do photography and I want to have my work in here. And so it becomes like a natural progression because in order to be involved in art is everywhere, but it's definitely like that's where it is. It's in the museums, it's in the galleries,
Yeah,
if you really want to see it. So you got to just go to it. And then, you know, they'll have you like, I don't remember like when I first saw like an art call or an exhibition call, but you submit your work, probably like in high school, you submit your work, you get like a ribbon, they put it up for you. Your parents come to see it, and then you're like, you just keep doing that for the rest of your life.
the funny thing is, I did do that in high school. I would submit my work and I would win prizes or whatever, but I never thought that extended after high school. It never occurred to me to try that. So that's why I was asking. What I really liked about listening to your show is that you talk to other artists and you talk to them about exhibition. You talk to them about how they got started in their work. And it just never occurred to me. Like you talked to one artist who said like, and you were talking about just having an exhibition in your home, just inviting people over to look at your artwork in your home. So you don't have to rent out a space. You can just use your own space in order to, expose people to your art. And it never occurred to me that was a thing that could be done. Oh, hold on a second. Somebody's trying to call.
Oh, sure, no problem.
I thought I put my phone on silent. So yeah, so that's what I enjoyed about the show. So I was like, well, and now it's like it got me thinking that that's something that I could consider, but I would have to start drawing and painting again.
You know what? Maybe, or you can see what you have and look at some art exhibitions and submit what you currently have, or even if there's like opportunity to show your work in a coffee shop or a library, would that be interesting to you?
Yeah. I think I could try that.
Yeah, because I think that would be really cool. I went to the smoothie shop and they had artwork hanging in there too. And I'm just like, there's all sorts of ways, but yeah, definitely having an exhibition in your house, like even if it's just like you pick 3 walls, have some snacks and invite some friends over and talk about it. That's definitely something you could do. And that happens a lot. Chicago has a huge artist run space community, and there's tons of artists that they either have like their own like storefront or they have apartment galleries, and that's like all over. People will have apartment galleries, and they'll not only show their work, but they'll exhibit other people as well, and like treat it as like as a real space. And that's why, it's like really everywhere. I'm on a board of an organization called Terrain Exhibitions, and Terrain was started with that thought in mind. Like, art can be anywhere. It can be on the front porch. It could be in a window. This artist who's now passed Sabina Ott, she started that. She started inviting artists to create installations and sculptures in front of her house, and it would stay up for a month. She'd have an opening. People would come and see it. And now it's expanded to like being all across the country. We'll have like a biennial where people will sign up. Artists can create these sculptures or like anything, like in a window, wherever the homeowner will let them. And yeah, it can be anywhere. So you can definitely, I would encourage you to, even if it's just, Zoe's work from 1990 to 1994, and you can like share that work, pick out like 6 pieces, hang it up in your place, have folks over. Sounds like a nice afternoon to me.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Heck yeah.
So with all of the work you're doing, like with your show, your podcast, your work in the film industry, do you still have time to do things like that, showing off exhibition, or actually even creating new art, going out, taking new photographs and whatnot?
Yes, I am yes, I do find time to do it because it is a passion of mine. I really like to do it. I think it helps my art making. Also, I think helps inform my work in commercial film, the commercial film industry, because it just sort of keeps me in like conversation of spaces. So like in the film business, I work in the art department and set decorating departments. And so our role is to, like, I have bosses and stuff, but the role of the art department and set decorating is to create the environment of which these characters live. So that does help inform artwork I'm doing, because it just keeps me in conversation about thinking about places and spaces and people and backgrounds of like who someone is all the time. And I will make up time, like on the evenings or on the weekends, like if I'm interviewing somebody. Right now, I'm not currently on a project. So, I can interview people like during the week, during the day. If I'm on a project, I try to move it to like the evenings or weekends if they'll allow me, their time to like talk to them on the weekends. Just trying to get it in like wherever I can. But definitely the evenings is, where the art happens after work. For sure.
That sounds fascinating. Yeah, because one of the hardest things about balancing everything is finding time to do the things that you're most passionate about. Like, for example, I'm passionate about playing video games, but it's super hard to find time to do that.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, at least it is right now. I think things have calmed down a little bit where I can, I just find better ways of managing my time so I can, satisfy all of the different passions that I have.
Yeah. Because it would seem like video games, like, see, I feel like if you draw, maybe even with photography, like if I say, okay, I just need to make one photo today, that could be of anything, boom, it's done. If you could sketch for 15 minutes, boom, that's done. I don't know. Can you play video games for like 10 minutes? It seems like you need to allow. Oh, you can.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. It depends on which game that you're playing, but yeah, you can definitely do that. There are certain games that are like designed where to be only played for like a few minutes, and then there are other games that are designed where you have to put more time and effort into it. So it depends on what a person's gaming habit is and the types of games that they're into. So
gotcha.
I can definitely do that. But sometimes you just feel like your attention is pulled in a bunch of different directions.
Oh yeah, all of this is easier said than done.
Yeah.
Sure. It's all easier said than done, that's for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
So the movie that we're going to talk about, I sent you the grand list of movies.
Yes.
And the movie you chose was Brewster's Millions. So let everybody know why you chose Brewster's Millions.
So Brewster's Millions, I chose because I thought the concept was interesting. Figuring out how you could spend all this money in a certain amount of time in order to get more money, but they had like this, I don't want to give it away if that's not where we're going yet, but like with this like certain amount of time to spend this money. And it also had Richard Pryor in it, who, I feel like I was maybe like only like 2 or 3 years old when the 1985 Brewster's Millions came out. So while I would know about Richard Pryor, I wasn't like in, his heyday, but I know my parents and
Right.
stuff enjoyed him. So it was like, oh, that would be really cool to see him in a film.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
The funny thing for me is that I think Brewster's Millions was the first Richard Pryor movie that I saw.
Mm-hmm.
And the funny thing about that was because I had known about Richard Pryor and I'd known about the other films that he's did, or that he's done. I've known about The Toy. I've known about his work with Gene Wilder. He's done a few films with him, and I know about his stand up. So it's like he was always in the zeitgeist, as that guy, that comedian. And he's even had like a few TV shows. I think he's even had a children's show at one time.
Wow.
So yeah, he was just there. So when it came out in theaters, I was excited to go and actually see a Richard Pryor movie in theaters. No, actually, I kind of take it back. But this is the first movie starring Richard Pryor that I've seen. But I probably saw Superman 3 before I saw this movie, which was not necessarily a Richard Pryor film.
Yeah.
And it was a massive disappointment to boot. But this is the first one where it's like based on it's like it's surrounding Richard Pryor. It was his film and everything. I want to get into talking about Brewster's Million, but we had a little kerfuffle because you got to watch the original, well, not the original, an earlier version of this movie. So you watched the 1945 adaptation of Brewster's Million.
Yes.
So
YouTube failed me. YouTube failed me.
Right.
I'm just gonna call them out.
Right. So obviously on this show, because the movies that we talk about are so old, it's like there's no spoiler warning. Everything gets spoiled here. So tell us a little bit about the movie that you saw.
Okay, so the 1945 Brewster's Millions is about a man who just got home from the military. And I mean, he just got home, and this like bank was like, we're glad you're home because your uncle, or like maybe it was his great uncle, your uncle left this money for you. And so we need you to come and get it. And he's like, what? What are you talking about? And so he goes down there and they're like, look, there's $8 million here for you, but you need to spend 1 million of it. And you get 2 months to do it. Nobody can know about it. And he's like, well, I got to tell him I'm about to get married. And he's like, they said, you can't get married. No assets. A wife is an asset. Absolutely not. You cannot get married. You cannot tell everybody about this. And so he's like, okay. So then he comes home and he just starts going crazy. He wants to like get the top floor of a building and make it his office. He starts promoting. He has like a butler. He promotes the butler. He starts. He took a cab home. He automatically like paid for the cab. He wanted to own it. He's like, I'm starting a fleet, and like just paid for it for the guy. And he just sort of starts going crazy, and people are just like, what? He was supposed to also get married like 2 days. So now he has to call off the wedding, because they're like, you can't have a wife. And so of course his like fiance is like, what are you talking about? And he's like, well, we'll just put it on hold. I'm not ready. It's so frustrating, the ties that they put on him, like you can't buy assets or, and then also through the film, he keeps making money. So he'll buy a building and the building would appreciate. And that's wrong. You have to spend all this money.
Right,
So he
right,
just
right.
kept getting into this like bad luck, and it was really giving me anxiety, you know?
That's funny.
It was really giving me anxiety because even just like, for example, he he's talking on the phone. He gets another phone call, and it's like a radio show. It's like, congratulations, you've won $25,000. And he's like, it's none of your business, and hangs up the phone. So you're just being like rude. You can't take in this money and say like, okay, I'm just going to give that 25 grand to my butler then. Like, it's not
Right.
me, it's the butler. But because it's all coming through him, he cannot take in any money. He got some bankers to help him with his money, and they were like selling off stuff so that he can make, profit and stuff. And he was like, no, 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 no. He invested in the arts. He got this guy like a bunch of money, like say like 20 grand to help him make a show where like he was only like had like $500. He was really like hooking people up, but he just kept making money off of everything he was doing. And he could not sell this money. At the end, when it's like down to the wire, they tried to tell him like, oh no, you didn't make it in time. But he's like, no, 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 I made it. And he like was giving out money, trying to give people money back. Like, hey, oh yeah, that's right, you brought me drinks, let me pay you back. Like he's just trying to at the final hour. Then they finally were like, all right, fine, now you have the money. And everybody's like, what was that about? And he's like, I had to do this so I could win 7 million. And it actually sort of like feels like it rushed the end. It's like, oh, okay, now you have the money. And it's like, you guys took us on this whole journey. Then at the end, you're like, now you got the money. And it's
Right,
like,
right,
what?
right. So that's basically the gist of the movie that this show is about. And all of these are based on a novel, so we'll get into that a little later on.
Okay.
But what's interesting is that having you described it, I saw the similarities and some of the differences between the movie that you watched and the movie that I watched.
Okay.
And one of the main things is that, well, in the movie that I watched, he had to spend a lot more money, and then they more clearly, I mean, they probably did in their earlier Brewster's Millions. But in this movie, they were clear about what he could and could not spend his money on. Like, they really emphasized that he couldn't have any assets. And it's funny that in the movie that you talked about, that his wife was an asset. Like,
a valuable asset. It said a valuable asset.
Right, right. Which is not how we view our significant others today, right? We don't view them as assets because they're their own person.
Right.
But let's see. So in the movie, the Richard Pryor version, he couldn't just give it away. This is something that the uncle is talking to him. Like on the part that I read earlier was his uncle speaking to him through a video recording. So it was not even a video recording. It's more like a reel to reel tape. So because it's 1985. So his uncle did a recorded will on a reel to reel film strip. And so Brewster is brought in to watch this film of his uncle speaking to him from beyond the grave.
Okay.
Which is why he starts off like that, greetings from beyond the grave. And so he tells Brewster that he couldn't just give it away. He could give like a certain percentage away. Like he could give away like 5%, but he couldn't give all of his money away.
Yeah.
And he couldn't buy something that was valuable and destroy it. So you couldn't buy like a bunch of Picassos and destroy them in a fire. He said that's not allowed. He couldn't destroy anything of inherent value. And he could hire anybody he wanted. And he could like do whatever he could to spend the money. And the rationale, do you remember the rationale for why he had to play this game in the version that you watched?
I think it was it was something that like, if you could like throw this away, then you will like know how to manage money or something like that. Right. Yeah. Like if you can easily piss away $1 million, then, and you can see like what all that means, then you will know like the value of $1.
Right.
Yeah.
So in this version, the uncle talks about how he got caught smoking cigars and by his own father, and his father locked him in a closet with a box of cigars and told him he had to smoke it all.
Oh, wow.
And it made him sick to his stomach, and from that day on he hated smoking cigars.
Wow.
So he said he was going to do to Brewster what his father did to him, and he's going to give him a chance to win $300 million, but he would have to spend $30 million in a month. And that if he could do that, he would be so sick of spending money that he wouldn't want to spend money anymore. So that was his right. He was going to make Brewster hate spending money by engaging in this like ridiculous contest.
Yeah.
And if he refused to, like if he chickened out, if he didn't want to participate, then his uncle would just grant him $1 million. If he participated and tried to spend the $30 million and fail, then he wouldn't get anything. He would walk out as penniless as he did when he first entered into the contract.
Dang.
So that was the stipulation.
Yeah.
And the movie ensues. So why don't you tell about Brewster's Million in 1985?
Okay, so Montgomery Brewster is a relief pitcher for the Hackensack Bulls minor league baseball club. With dreams of making it into the major leagues, he suddenly receives an inheritance of $300 million, but there's a catch. In order to get this money, he has to spend $30 million in 30 days with nothing to show for it, or no assets at all. At the end of the 30 days, if he succeeds, he gets the full $300 million inheritance. If he fails, he walks out as penniless as he was when he accepted the challenge. Does Monty have the guile to pull off this stunt? Does he even have the cojones to accept the challenge? For Monty, it's time to play ball.
Absolutely. So this movie was released May 22nd, 1985, produced by Universal Pictures, Davis Entertainment, and Lawrence Gordon Productions. It grossed over $40 million in the U.S. and Canada, over $45 million worldwide on a reported budget of $20 million. So if you understand these numbers, you understand that this movie just barely broke even. If you adjust it for inflation, it's $116 million that it grossed in the U.S. and Canada, and $131 million worldwide. And the budget would have been $58 million. So just, I mean, in a wider context, is basically a flop. But but some people might say that it just barely broke even. And either way, it's not great. It's not what they expected, especially when you get somebody like Richard Pryor. You really expect it to do better. And I didn't realize that. I thought that, and it's like you only really hang around people that, enjoy the same things. There's no internet or anything when you're growing up.
Yeah.
So I had no idea that this movie wasn't a blockbuster. I'm just now finding out.
Yeah. And even when I was talking to a friend before we had our conversation today, they were like, oh yeah, I remember Brewster's Million. That was a good movie. So people did enjoy it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But unfortunately, like many films, it had like people like it, but it just didn't do the numbers that, you hoped.
Right. It probably made some money back from like, the DVD sales or whatever, but its initial run in theaters was not fantastic. And the other thing about it is that when people talk about Brewster's Million, they're talking about this movie. There have been many adaptations of Brewster's Million, but this is the only one that people think about when they talk about this movie.
Yeah, which I was like, again, I was so shocked when I went to sit down, and because the 1945 version, but it has the 1985 cover on it.
Right. You said you had seen it on YouTube?
Yeah, YouTube TV.
Right. So now we got to be cautious of YouTube TV. So when I watched it, I saw it on Amazon, and Amazon actually had a sale. Like I think to rent it was $3.99 and to buy it was $5. I was like, well, if you're only going to charge $5 to buy, because it was on sale, because the regular price is like $16. So I was like, well, if it's on sale, I might as well go ahead and go for it. It's like, I don't know if I'll ever watch this movie again, but I'm going to go ahead and buy it since it's there, since the option is there. And
I forget about Amazon. I have Amazon Prime, but I forget to actually like log into my TV with Amazon.
Yeah.
I got to do that.
There's one app you could probably, well, you don't do a lot of podcasts with movies and whatnot, but if ever you want to watch a movie, you thought about a movie that you want to watch, there's one app that you could probably use called what's it called? Play Now? Play Listen? See, now I'm forgetting the name of the app.
Okay.
Let me look at it real quick. Let me look it up on my phone because I can't stand not knowing things for even a second. I've been spoiled by search engines. It's called Just Watch.
Just Watch. Okay.
So Just Watch is an app where, if you want to know where a movie is streaming, you can just type in the name of the movie and it'll show you where it's streaming, if it's streaming at all. And, yeah. And if it's not streaming, it'll let you know it's not streaming, but it'll give you other options like, well, you can't stream it, but you can buy it here. Usually it almost always recommends Apple TV. So I think Apple has some what you call a business connection with the app because Apple TV is always an option.
Wow. Go ahead, Apple. I know that's right.
Right. So we got a bunch of people starring in this movie. Why don't you start us off with the main star?
So the main star is Richard Pryor, who plays Montgomery Monty Brewster, who was also in Bustin' Loose, See No Evil, Hear No Evil, and Stir Crazy.
Yes, those are definitely classic Richard Pryor movies. Have you seen any of those?
I have not.
Okay, neither have I.
Okay.
I think I've seen very few movies that featured Richard Pryor. The only other movie besides Superman 3 that I think of when I think of Richard Pryor is a movie called, hold on, let me think of it. Nope, can't remember it. And I did a podcast episode on it too.
Well, I mean, you've done like over 100 episodes.
Right. And remember. I'm over 50 years old, and so my memory fails quite often. Yeah. But it's a movie with Richard Pryor and Eddie Murphy. Harlem Nights, that's what it's called. I knew it would come. I didn't know it was going to come so soon. So,
and I think and this isn't listed on there, but I have seen, I think, like a little bit of the toy where he's the toy.
Yeah, toy. I think wasn't Robin Williams in there? I think he was.
I think so. Yeah. Wow.
No, not Rob. I'm thinking of a different one. Robin Williams was in a completely different movie.
I have no idea.
with a similar premise, but the toy was something different. I remember my cousin was telling me about that one. But anyway, the next actor is John Candy. He plays Spike Nolan. He's also been in Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, Uncle Buck, and Spaceballs. He's one of my favorite comedic actors, and I really loved him in Spaceballs. He's always bringing in the funny, and he's quite good at his job.
Yeah, he is. I love Uncle Buck. Uncle Buck. Yeah, so good. So good. Yeah, he's really funny.
Who's next?
May he rest in peace.
Yeah.
So next we have Lynette McKee, who played Angela Drake, and she also was in Jungle Fever, Men of Honor, and Malcolm X.
Yep, Malcolm X is something I covered on episode 144, and she doesn't have a huge part in there, but she's instantly recognizable, and she's very good in this film. This is the only film that's really prominent when I think about her, but yeah, she's very good in this movie. So up next is Stephen Collins. He plays Warren Cox. He's also been in The First Wives Club and Blood Diamond. Not a very good human being. So I guess the least we say about him is, he's a naughty person.
Wow.
He's not very good. It's one of those things where he's done a bunch of work and you admire him, and then next thing you know, you realize that he's kind of a monster. So I guess the less we say about him, the better. So who's next?
Jerry Orbach, who played Charlie Pegler from Beauty and the Beast and also Universal Soldier.
Yeah, I covered Universal Soldier in episode 145. And the thing about Jerry Orbach is that not only is he a prolific actor, but he's also a prolific voice actor. So besides Beauty and the Beast, he's been in a lot of my favorite cartoons from when I was growing up.
Wow.
Yeah. So he's amazing. He's everywhere. He shows up when you don't expect it.
That's really cool. I love when actors do that, when they're just like a part of everything.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
He was a screen actor doing voice acting before it was cool for screen actors to do voice acting.
Yeah. He's like, all the coins, please.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So up next is Pat Hingle. He played Edward Roundfield. You may have seen him in Batman from 1989. I covered that in episode 23. And Hang 'em High. And I don't see a lot of movies that I recognize him from, but he's very good in this one. He plays kind of like, almost like a guardian angel figure. He's basically the executor of the will. And he's like,
okay.
and he's not supposed to take side, but he kind of sides with Monty. Like he's giving Monty some little bit of advice. He's kind of cheering Monty on because he kind of knows that, like in this film, Monty is given the money, like the bank is holding on to the money. So if Monty loses this contest, then the $300 million that was supposed to go to him will go to these bankers. And so they have an interest in seeing Monty lose. So they start to cheat, right? At first they don't think that Monty has like the financial wisdom to be able to spend that money. They don't think that he knows how to win the game without accruing assets. But what happens is that Monty starts to show that he knows what he's doing. So what happens is that they start to cheat. And this guy that Pat Hingle plays, Edward, he kind of knows that these people are, not that he knows that they're crooked, but he kind of, you know, you recognize when somebody's might have a tendency to be dirty, right?
Yeah.
So that, I think that's the reason why he's kind of cheering Monty on and giving Monty advice, because he knows that these bankers are probably going to leverage their power against them. And that's basically what they do.
That's wild, because in the 1945 version, they sort of just give it to him, shake his hand, and then when he calls to check in, they call to check in on him. He's like, you know, this is hard. You know, like my girl is like about to leave me, you know, and they're like, they just hang up on him. Like,
right.
Like, we're not here to like counsel you.
Right.
So yeah, so Pat Hingle. Then we have Tova Felsa, who played Marilyn, who you've seen in Lady in the Water and Silver Bullet.
And after that is Joe Grafisi. He plays J.B. Donaldo. He's been in Presumed Innocent and The Deer Hunter, and he kind of plays the sort of detective / photographer in the movie.
And then we have Peter Jason, who plays Chuck Fleming, who you've seen in They Live and Mortal Kombat.
Up next is David White. He plays George Granville. He's been in The Apartment and Fast Forward.
And then Jerome Dempsey, who played Norris Baxter, who was also in The Network and The Hudsucker Proxy.
The next two guys, they were basically cameo roles, and I recognize them from either some other work that they did, or in this case, Yakov Smirnoff was a famous comedian when I was growing up. He plays Vladimir, who's a cab driver, and he's also been in The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai, Across the Eighth Dimension, and The Money Pit. I don't even remember him in Buckaroo Banzai, and I never seen The Money Pit. I just remember his routines. And what's the thing about his routine is that, you know, he would, as a comedian, one of his taglines was "America, what a country." So he would say a funny joke because he's a Russian comedian. He came over from Russia. He still had a thick Russian accent. So he came over from Russia, and he would basically, his routine was comparing things in Russia to things in the United States.
Oh,
and
okay.
He's marveling at what a great country the United States is. And he would always say, "America, what a country." And so he says that in the movie because that's his tagline. So, so it was fun seeing him. And then the next one.
Rick Moranis, who played Morty King, who's also in Parenthood and Strange Brew.
Right. He was only there for one scene, but he plays, it's like when I was looking at it, I was like, wait a minute, is that Rick Moranis with a beard?
Oh, that's so funny.
Yeah.
That's so funny. Parenthood's a fun film. Film. Yeah.
And the thing about so the character that Rick Moranis plays, like what happens is that in this movie, Morty, in order to spend his money, he decides to start a business. And his business is, he's basically a venture capitalist where he just invests in any crazy idea. He said, like, if you've tried to get an idea off the ground and you've constantly been turned down, bring your ideas to me and I will give you the money to do this idea.
Oh, I like that. I like that.
So one of the dudes that comes is a guy who he calls himself Morty King the Mimic. And so everything that Morty says, everything that the original Morty says, this guy would, or everything that Monty says, I'm confusing myself now. Everything that Monty says, the mimic would say it the exact same way, you know, like somebody who's mocking him, but not really mocking him. He's just saying, but what use do you have for a person like that who's just mimicking everything you say? So that was his thing. And so he was only in the film for one scene, but it was kind of funny seeing him in the film. It was like, is that Rick Moranis? Yeah. That's what I kept saying. So
I love that. Like, what a treat. What a treat to be able to give, like, to be able to fund ideas in that way. Like, I don't care what it is. Let's see. Yeah. Because it's like so many things need funding to get started, you know? So it's like, all right, you want to have this mimic business? Okay, we'll see how it goes. Like, here's your money. Now go see what you can do with it. Right. We'll come back to it, you know?
But his idea is to get rid of all of his money. So if he could find people with ideas that fail, then that's him losing money. And that was the gist of what he was trying to do.
Yes, I know, but still.
Yeah, but it would be great if somebody was magnanimous enough to be able to do that in real life.
Yeah, because if it fails, it's like, okay.
Right. You know. At least you tried.
Yup.
So tell us about the director.
Okay, so this was directed by Walter Hill, who also did The Warriors, Hard Times, 48 Hours, Crossroads, and Extreme Prejudice.
All right. So have you seen any of those movies?
I've seen The Warriors, and I believe I've seen 48 Hours.
Yeah, he's got a pretty good resume of film. So
yeah, he has a really cool range, doesn't he?
Yeah, he has a great range. I really liked, I think I only seen 48 Hours from this list, but I've heard of The Warriors and I've heard of Extreme Prejudice. So I'm familiar with some of these other ones, but, I think he also did another 48 Hours. That's another film that I seen that he did. So yeah, he's good. He's got a good thing going on over here.
Yeah.
And also, this movie was written by George Bar McCutcheon, Herschel Weingrod, or it might be Weingrod, and Timothy Harris. So Brewster's Million from 1985 is the 7th movie adaptation of George Bar McCutcheon's 1902 novel, and it's the 8th if you count the Telugu film No, But Money Flows In. That movie was from 1954, and it's Telugu is a language in India, so in basically an Indian language film. The other adaptations include Miss Brewster's Million from 1926, 3 on a Spree from 1961, Brewster's Million, the movie that you saw from 1945, and Hello, Mr. Billionaire. That's one of the most recent adaptations, and that's from China, and it came out in 2018. So yeah, this is a premise that people just love, and they'll just keep doing it over and over again because we're fascinated about trying to spend millions, or in the case of Hello, Mr. Billionaire, $1 billion in a short amount of time. And I think there's a lot of comedy that can be drawn from that.
Yeah. It makes me still sort of mad because I'm like, you know what? In today's age, I don't have time. We need this money, okay?
Right.
We don't have time to be like goofing off. Like, especially I think the control piece still, like, okay, yeah, you can have this, but you can't do this, and this.
Right,
and it's like, because, you know, I would keep thinking like, okay, if I was given this, what would I do? And anything that I wanted to do, I couldn't do. Like, it would not fit in this, you know, but here, like I'm based in Chicago, we have like this like Dalton, like one of the suburbs, Dalton mayor, who's like in trouble, who like spent 30 grand at Amazon, and it's like, oh, she could do this easily.
Well, she has
She could
assets
probably.
though. That's the problem. She got stuff. If she's buying from Amazon, then she's buying a bunch of stuff, and the stuff has value.
Oh, right. Yeah. See, I keep getting my stuff entangled. See, I would fail. I would fail.
Yeah. I would fail too. I would fail.
Yeah, I would fail.
Well, actually, it's a little bit easier because everything is subscription based. So I would buy a whole bunch of subscriptions.
Okay.
It's like, oh, so this subscription is $300,000 a year. I'll buy that.
That is true. You could do like gym memberships, but then they probably be like, well, that's going to like help you with your health. Like, I don't know. It's and see, that's why I'm like, oh my gosh, like it's so tricky. It really is hard. So I guess it is funny, but it also is like stressful.
Yeah, absolutely. So Reingrod and Harris, they also wrote Trading Places, Twins, Kindergarten Cop, and Space Jams. I think I've seen all of these movies, and they're all, I enjoyed them all, except maybe Space Jam. I wasn't a huge fan of Space Jam, but I've seen all of these movies. No, I didn't see Trading Places either. I just keep wanting to see this movie, just never got around to it. But they're a pretty good writing team.
Yeah, I think I've seen all of these. I agree with you. I'm not a big Space Jam fan, but when I say that, people get so shocked at it. So I'm like, am I missing something? So I'm glad that you also are not a big fan at it. I'm glad you're not a big fan of Space Jam as well.
Right. I think you're of the right age where Space Jam would have been appealing. Like it was targeted so much at younger audiences. And so to the point where older audiences aren't particularly impressed with it. Like my son, he really enjoys Space Jam, and he's like 26 years old, but it's one of his favorite movies because when it came out, that was his jam. That was like, he was I don't know, when did Space Jam come out? Probably 1990 something.
In the 90s.
Right. So he was like 2 or 3 years old. So watching that, it blew his mind.
Okay. So like really little. That's like a toddler film.
Right. Totally blew his mind. So he, it's like he never got over how amazing that movie was to him. So tell us about the score.
So the score was by Ray Cooder, who also did Paris, Texas, Streets of Fire, Geronimo, An American Legend, Last Man Standing, and Primary Colors.
Yep. I don't know if the movie was all of that impressive in this movie, right? It was one of those movies where the music was good enough to get along, but not enough to be like where I'm humming the theme like after I leave the theater. And it's usually that way if it's not like an action movie or a superhero movie or a space drama or something like that. Usually when you're dealing or like some kind of epic like Western tale or something like that. So this isn't like the music isn't trying to make you think of an epic or trying to get you to hum the theme after you leave the theater. It's really just to move the story along, and it does well in that regard. But not something,
that's really good.
Yeah. But not something where it's like you're going to remember it after you leave.
Yeah.
So that's it for the opening credits. And I just have a few announcements. I announced this on the last episode, and I hadn't done it yet, but I'm reopening the eBay store called Bazaar de Alonso, and it's a lot of stuff because I just moved, and so I got a lot of stuff that I'm trying to get rid of.
Okay.
So I figured maybe I should sell it on eBay, and I have had a shop on eBay for a long time, but I haven't used it in a long time, so I need to go and reopen, like what you call it. You know how like when you have an eBay account and you kind of like have like an about yourself page. So I have to redo that, and then start putting stuff on eBay. Or at least it used to have an about you page. I don't know if it's still there anymore. But yeah.
I shop on eBay all the time for film jobs, and I've never seen that. But I guess actually maybe thinking back, like maybe there is some like folks you click on the shop, but because I like enter eBay with like typing, like, like just in the search bar of like what I'm looking for.
Right.
I go from it that way, but it's cool to think about it from like an actual shop perspective. So this is very exciting.
Yeah. And so I want to do that. And also I have a listener letter So this is the first listener letter that I've gotten in a long, long time, and I'm excited to read it out. So this is from Nikki. It says, "Hello, my name is Nikki. Can you please do Romeo and Juliet from 1996, Titanic from 1997, Cruel Intentions from 1999, Carrie from 1976, Ever After from 1998, Urban Legend from 1998, The Phantom of the Opera from 2004, Hook from 1991, Love Again from 2023, Camelot from 1967, and for me, as a request for me for my birthday next year on May 18th. So these are a lot of movies.
Yes, they are.
I couldn't do all of these movies on one day. And it seems cruel to wait all the way until next May to do any of these movies. And most of these movies I have not actually seen. But I do want to do a Titanic episode. And I do want to do an episode of a movie that I hadn't seen before. But I think what I should do is, in the next few weeks, I should do Hook. I definitely seen that movie. And I enjoy Robin Williams. So maybe I'll zero in on, I should zero in on the Hook in the next couple of weeks. So I'll keep that in mind, Nikki. Look out for Hook in the next couple of weeks. So that's it for the announcements. And the next segment is favorite parts. So on the favorite parts. So since you did watch a different movie than I watched, I want you to talk about we're going to list 5 of our favorite parts. It could be like the actors. It could be a scene. It could be the lighting, maybe, or it could be anything from the film that you really like. And I'm going to lose count, but I will try to keep count. So, and then we'll go back and forth talking about our favorite parts. So tell me what one of your favorite parts was.
Okay, so one part that did stand out to me does have to do with like the set design, and I can't remember the characters, but the Brewster lead character, his fiance, he kept wanting to get her flowers. And she's like, you know, I have so many flowers, I can't even get in my office. And so each time we went to her office, we did see like an abundance of flowers, like each time, which like to show, you know, like just how many flowers he was getting her. And I thought that was really cool, like to see her like in the corner with like all these flowers. You know, it was just like a constant throughout the film, just to show like how many flowers he did get. Right. So I did like that they kept that up.
Right, trying to spend the money. In this movie, Brewster was spending money he would like go to the bar and buy at the bar, and you know, constantly he had a minor league baseball team, so he was constantly buying stuff for his team. Like he bought new uniforms, and he arranged for them to play the Yankees, which cost a lot of money. He was spending a lot of money by buying stuff for perishables, basically, for other people. So what's interesting is that in the regular version, or the version that I watch, I'm referring to that as the regular version. He doesn't have a wife, but there is a woman that he likes, but she's the fiance of a dude that he doesn't particularly care for. Now, the woman that he likes is interesting because, remember, he can't tell anybody why he has to spend the money, only that he has to. The woman is assigned to him by the bank, and her job is to account for all of the money that he's spending, because they got to make sure that he spends the money and that he doesn't accrue any assets, right? So she's keeping track of all of the money that he's spending for the bank. So they're working closely together. So he's constantly trying to kind of hit on her, and she's constantly trying to like reject him, mainly because she has a fiance, but also because he disgusts her, because she's kind of like a charitable type of person. Like she's the type of person who cares about you know, charity and about helping disenfranchised people. And this dude is just like spending the type of money that a poor person would need or would make in a year. Like he's spending $30,000 in a heartbeat. And this is something that a person would spend all year just trying to scrounge around to try to make that money. So she's not impressed. He's actually offensive to her. So there's a challenge with him trying to basically pull her as a romantic partner. So one of my favorite parts is John Candy. Just as an actor in the film. So,
Yeah.
so he's one of the first people you see in the film. The film opens up with them playing baseball. He's they're all in the minor leagues, and what happens is that so there's an opposing player. He comes up. Brewster is a pitcher. So, he's pitching the ball, and the guy's either fouling out or he's striking. So he's got one more to either strike or hit foul, and he's out. So so the guy, the batter, he swings and he hits the ball, and it's a foul ball. And John Candy's character, what is his name? His name is Spike. So Spike says something like, "Foul ball. I bet you feel like a piece of shit, don't you?" And that's so funny. He's just pissing off the batter. He knows how, and that's basically his job. His job is not necessarily to catch the ball. Anybody can catch the ball. His job is to speak to the batters and basically throw them off key or off balance, so they're not thinking about hitting the ball. They're thinking about punching him in the face, right? So
Yeah.
and he does it again when they get a chance to play the New York Yankees. He's talking to this professional baseball player. He plays in the major leagues, and the guy is trying to hit this ball, and he's not hitting every ball. Like, he's got 2 strikes already, and then on the last on his last chance where he can either hit the ball or he can strike out, that's when and at first it's funny, right? Because Spike is speaking all respectful to this guy from the New York Yankees. He's speaking respectful and everything, and he's not insulting him in any way. And it's like he's getting along with the batter and catching the balls. And then on the last swing, he goes, "Yeah, I saw your wife on TV." And the guy says, "Yeah," and he says, "Yeah, your wife she's an ugly bitch." And it's like this, and it's like he's doing this, and then Monty throws the ball. He swings. He misses as a strike, and then he wants to punch the catcher, and then they have to pull him off the. They have to pull him off the field, or like, because the catcher is throwing him off base. That's his job. So John Candy is really good at that. He's really good at his dialogue. He's just easy flowing with the way he speaks and his presence on film. It's just fun to look at. One of the first things he does when Monty gets rich, he hires a bunch of his friends to work for him, and one of the first people he hires is John Candy as Spike, and he hires John Candy as his I guess as his co-CEO, or second in command, vice president. I think he makes him vice president, and he gives him a ridiculous salary. And so one of the first thing he does with his salary is he buys a suit, and he buys this giant catcher's mitt. Is a golden catcher's mitt that he wears around his neck. So he wears that around his neck during the entire movie. So just just fun, just a fun thing to look at.
Yeah, that definitely sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah. So what's one of your other favorite parts?
One of my other favorite parts was, I just feel like during this film, I was trying to resolve if I thought this was like a funny film or not, because it was like a comedy. And there was a part where there's these performers, and they were like, we ran out of money to put on our show. And the guy's like, "Okay, I'm going to give you like, 20 grand to put on your show." And he's like, "You should really see what my performer could do." And the Brewster guy is like, "Well, she looks like she's a star. She doesn't seem like she's like a side person or whatever, like just some, extra." And she's like, "Oh, I can dance with a glass of water on my head." And so, they bring her over into the room, and her gentleman with her is like playing the piano, and she puts this glass of water on her head. She's just doing these like really silly dances. And I'm like, this is so dumb. And I'm like, it is so dumb. And, it was just so silly. But then, of course, he's funding it, so now she feels she's like a big star from these like basic moves. And it just really, really tickled me. I'm just like, oh my gosh. And they, now they're about to. So then he gives them the money and like the show. He's like, make the show big, 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 So they have like a whole chorus of like 50 girls doing this silly dancing, and it's just a mess.
Right.
It's just a mess, just to like, for sake of like spending money, and he's like, we need more girls, and like the director of the show's like, we have enough girls. He's like, well, get more girls and put them in the audience, like just get more, like spend this money.
Right.
But the show is just ridiculous. So it's like, so now these people think that they're like on this like hit Broadway show, but it's not necessarily the best show. It just really made me laugh.
Right. Well, you laughed, so I guess it's working. I guess it works as a comedy.
You know what? I'm trying to decide. I guess that is true, because I'm like shaking my head at it being silly, but obviously that's the point, right?
Right.
So
right.
You're right.
So, one of the funniest moments for me is, so Monty is going around. He's being introduced to some of the other people in the film. So one of the persons, I don't know grammar. So, so we already talked about the woman that he wants to make his love interest, the person who's calculating all of his expenditures. Her name is Angela Drake. And she's engaged to marry Warren Cox. Now, Warren Cox is a upperly mobile fellow. He's, I think what do we call him? We used to call him yuppies. So that's what Warren Cox is, a young urban professional. And he also works for the bank. And he's one of the people that will reveal himself later on. But when you first meet him, he's just Angela's fiance. And he mentions that, that his ex-wife was an interior designer. So because his ex-wife was an interior designer, Monty immediately hires him to redecorate his office. Because he does a lot of things as the Monty does in your movies, that he he rents out the top floor of a fancy hotel. He rents out like the top 2 floors, uses them as his office and living space. So obviously that's going to be a whole lot of money. And then, so when the guy comes and he's visiting his wife, but then when Monty meets him, he hires him as an interior decorator to redecorate the office. And because one of the things that Warren does, he starts critiquing the decor of the office. And so Monty sees this opportunity to hire him to quote unquote make it better. So he has this conversation about him, and the guy's like real pretentious. Like he's not really a jerk, but he's kind of pretentious. And then and Angela just wants to get out of there because she like I said, she's not impressed with Monty at all. She's just trying to get her and the fiance out of there. Monty offers Warren a ridiculous amount of money to redecorate the office. So he accepts. He says, bring your wife and she can help you do it too. He says, okay, that's great. Cause it's more money than he's getting at the law firm. And then, they finally are able to get, like, Angela finally gets Warren out of Monty's office and they leave. And then Monty turns to the camera and says, that was a real asshole. And then kind of walks away. So that was kind of unexpected. It's funny because it's unexpected. He breaks the fourth wall. He breaks the fourth wall to complain about Warren. So that was kind of funny.
That's funny. Clearly your version is way more funnier than mine, obviously.
Well, I haven't seen it, so maybe I should check it out because I'm curious about seeing some of these earlier films. And then the humor,
I know, me too.
Right, and then the humor is it's going to be different because it's in a different time. It's speaking to a different audience.
Yeah.
So what's another part that you like?
I think another part that I really liked was probably just the end because, this guy, when they're like, okay, you get the money, because he is really being tormented. He just really hates this. Nobody understands why he's doing this. They're trying to stop him. They're even trying to help him. Even his butler's like, I'm going to give you some of the money back. It seems like you're like just out of control.
Yeah.
You're just out of control, and I really, really felt a sense of relief when he was able to share, like, I had to do that to get to this, that, it was just such a tough ride.
Right.
People not believing in him. He almost lost his relationship. He's losing his friends over this.
Right.
Which was really interesting because you would think it would be a space where it's like, okay, this is weird, but I'm just going to ride with it. Like, there is sort of a piece that's like, you know what? It's not your money. So what do you care what I do with it?
Right, right.
But then people kept trying to like help protect him. So when it was at the end and they were just like, okay, you got it now. I'm like, oh, thank God. But I feel like you didn't even really get to learn if he learned anything from it because that was just the end.
Right.
Like, did he actually hate spending or like, what's he going to do? How are they going to clear out this office? Will they remain there now that he's still a millionaire? Like, what is the plan? And,
well, you did mention that he was getting sick, like he was complaining about it was causing him anxiety. So that was apparently that was a lesson that he was supposed to learn, and I guess that worked in his instance. One of my favorite parts is like you mentioned in a movie that you watched where people are trying to give him money or they're trying to give him financial advice and he starts to accidentally make money. And so that's one of the things that happened in this film. That's one of the important elements. So he's spending money and he's going at a good clip. Like he's, and like his friends try to help him. Like, what Spike does is Spike hires, he brings aboard a financial says that he only makes money if his clients make money. So he's only taking 50% of the gains based on the advice that he gives his clients. But Monty offers the job for $100,000 a month. And he says, that's what the job pays. It pays this much money plus your 15%. And the guy says, okay, I'll make an exception in your case. So he has these guys and they go out and they start making investments. So he's buying, like Monty is buying a bunch of ridiculous stuff. One of the things he buys is there's a company that wants to take an iceberg. They want to sail the iceberg to Saudi Arabia so that the farmers in Saudi Arabia could have water. And Monty's like, that's a great idea. Let's do it. And all of his friends is like, this is a terrible idea. The iceberg will melt before it ever gets to Saudi Arabia. There are no farms in Saudi Arabia. What you're doing is ridiculous. And Monty's like, no, this is a great idea. I'm going to buy it. So he buys it. He invests in this project and expecting it to fail. But what happens is that a larger company actually makes money, and he therefore makes money on his investment on this iceberg venture. Another thing that happens is that they took Spike and their financial advisor, they take some of Monty's money and they invest it in certain things, and then he ends up earning $10 million. And he kind of loses it. He was like, what are you doing? I'm right back where I started. And because he has to spend 30 million. Apparently he spent 10 million and now he's right back at 30 million. And he's at the beginning. He's at the middle of the month. Like it would have been different if he was at the beginning of the month, but now he's kind of like near the middle. They don't really show the timetable, but you can tell how upset he was that this must be like the middle of the month. And he's like reaching for straws because now they've earned him all the money that he had spent back. They're celebrating. They're going $10 million. And he basically screams and throw him out of his office.
That's the piece that I hated of the film. Like the money part, like, just like, this is just, feels like a horror film.
Right. Yeah. So he definitely has some anxiety. But my next favorite part will fix that. But what was another thing that you liked?
I think I didn't really have any other parts outside of it. I think it was just like a fun film. I think I don't think I had all my favorite. I think I've said all my favorite parts.
Okay. All right. Well, that was pretty good for something that came out in 1945. At least you've been able to extract some joy from it.
Yeah. I think I think it was interesting. It was interesting to watch. And I definitely am curious to see the other versions of how they tell this story. You know?
Right. You definitely got to check out the Richard Pryor version.
Yes, I do. The original plan.
I'll just finish up with my next two favorite parts.
Yeah.
So one of the things he does is that, so after his friends, they make him all of this money, he's like distraught. And he turns on the TV and he sees a news report about an election campaign. They're based in New York City. And he's he's based in New Jersey. But so I can't really tell what these guys are. Cause I don't know. I don't even know, because he plays for the Hackensack, Bulls, which is a New Jersey team, but I guess he's living in New York. So I guess he's a New Yorker. So I think he's running for New York. So he decides to run for New York because, political campaigns are a great way to spend a bunch of money. So that's what he does. And, so you got these two guys that are running. He decides to be the third candidate, and his campaign is none of the above. And he says, we're politicians. We're all full of shit. I don't want you to vote for me. I don't want you to donate to my campaign. I'm not taking any donations. I'm going to self-fund my campaign. And so in running for this campaign, it's like the money just basically starts to melt away. Like, and then plus all of the parties and stuff that he's throwing. He's doing TV ads for his, campaign, so that costs a lot of money, and he gets a lot of people on his side. People actually start cheering for him, like, none of the above. And then what happens is that near the end of the 30 days, he meets up with Edward, that's the executor, and he says that you got to be careful, because if you win the election, and it looks like you might, you will have an asset. And so, and that's like the, one of the few pieces of advice that, that the executor gives him. So you kind of know that the executor is on his side. So that's when he goes out. And the next day is, the exhibition game against the New York Yankees. He plays a 3-inning game against the Yankees because he believes that he can throw anybody out in three innings. So, and it's just like a friendly game because they are minor league. The New York Yankees are obviously major league, and everybody kind of just sees them as an eccentric, crazy billionaire. Like when they hear the name Montgomery Brewster or Monty Brewster, their eyes light up, and all of a sudden they're ready to sell him or anything. They're cheering for him. So it's at the end of this game. They lose the game, but it's at the end of this game that he announces that he's dropping out of the race. And the funny thing about this is that it kind of reminds me of, like, we're in election season now, and it kind of reminds me of like what happened earlier in this election cycle, where people were not exactly overly thrilled about the candidates that we have. There's like, you have two very old candidates running for the president of the United States, and people just weren't overly enthusiastic about either of these candidates. And it kind of reminded me of what happened in this particular film, where the people only got excited after a third candidate entered the mayoral election race. They got excited again, and they were cheering for him. And then he dropped out. And at the end of the film, so many people voted none of the above that neither of the candidates won. And then they had to do a new election. So I don't know how realistic that is, but it's funny that happened. And, and in this case, in the real life case, you had one candidate drop out, another candidate that he endorsed come in. She's younger. She's, has more energy, and she's instantly exciting, and it reignites her voter base. So that is something that so I see parallels with this film as I was watching it. It was like, this is so cogent right now.
Absolutely. Yeah, maybe that's why I found like such anxiety in this film, because I just feel like it's just like, you have all this access, but you're trapped by like what you can do with it. Instead of just doing like, I don't know. I just keep going back to like, if I had this, what I could do, and like anything I want to do to be able to get what I could get, it's like, I can't do anything, I'm like, let me make my community better.
Right.
It's like, no, you can't do that.
But you could donate. But there's only a certain amount you can donate, so you're kind of limited in that way. But you can hire a bunch of people, which Monty does. He hires a bunch of people for ridiculous salaries. So if you wanted to do something like start a nonprofit and then just hire a bunch of people for your nonprofit, you could do it that way. So one of the things that happens is that, like, when Monty first gets like the inheritance, he gets the rules, and he starts hiring people right away. He starts telling people that he's going to be crazy, but he's not crazy. He tries to tell that to his friends, but it's like they're not receiving the message. And like when he gets to the end of the 30 days, he's telling Angela, it's going to be all different. It's going to be all different. And just, I'm going to be a different person in a couple of weeks, or I'm going to be a different person tomorrow. But they don't understand what he's trying to say. They're not picking up what he's laying down. And they just think that he's playing crazy. They haven't heard the part of the message when he says, I'm going to act crazy, but I'm not. They don't hear that. And he can't, and he's frustrated because he can't tell anybody. And he's like, he almost tells, but he doesn't, right? There was a part where he almost tells Angela, but he doesn't tell her. So, and it weighs in on him that he has this awesome responsibility, but he can't tell. And the reason that he's not allowed to tell anybody is that his uncle tells him, no, you don't get any help. Nobody helped me with those goddamn cigars.
Yeah.
So,
oh my God.
So my favorite part, I'm just setting up my favorite part for the end of the movie. It has one of the best, endings of any movie that I've seen. So one of the people that's supposed to be helping him, that's actually not helping him, is Warren Cox. So Warren, like I said, he also works at a bank. So when they see that Monty is successful at spending money, one of the things that Monty does, that he buys this like extremely rare stamp. He buys the most expensive stamp at this stamp collector's house or whatever, the stamp collector shop. And it's a stamp that's worth $1.5 million or something like that. It's a stamp that's been misprinted, so only six of them are still in existence, and the shop owner has one of them. So he buys that, and then it cut to the bankers. They're laughing at Monty because they see in the news that he bought this extremely expensive stamp for $1.5 million. They're like, man, this guy doesn't even understand the rules of the game. He doesn't even know what he's doing. Yeah. And so they receive a newspaper and they receive a postcard, and they pick up the postcard, and the front of the postcard is a picture of the team, his minor league team. On the back of the card, it says, having a great time in Hackensack. Wish you were here. And they're laughing because they act like Monty doesn't know what he's doing. And then they look at the stamp that he used for the postcard. And it's the stamp that he just bought for $1.5 million. And he technically didn't destroy it. He just used it as a stamp, right?
Yeah. I love that.
So, that's when the bankers decide they have to do something because he's going to win. So they bring in Cox, and they tell Cox that, we're going to make you a partner, but we have to help you to make him fail. Right. So they tell Cox, because there's no restriction on them telling anybody about the game that Monty is playing. So they tell Cox, they let Cox in on everything. They tell him everything. And they say, we got to stop him from spending his money. So what they do with Cox, since Cox was hired by Monty to redecorate his office, what he does is that he goes and he buys some expensive furniture, and he pretends that Monty doesn't like it. So he takes it back and gets a refund. And they're doing everything in cash. So they give him a cash refund of $20,000. And he quote unquote forgets to send a receipt to his wife that he's supposed to report all the expenses and earnings to his wife, who's handling the accounts. So he pretends to forget, and then on the night that Monty has to go, because he's supposed to show that he has no money, that he's broke again by midnight at the end of the 30 days. He's on his way to the bank. He goes into the elevator, and then Cox jumps into the elevator. It's like, good news. You still have money. You have $20,000 because he spent everything, because he rented everything, or he leased everything. He didn't own anything. He either rented it or leased it. So by the time that he was ready to go to the bank, he had nothing left except the clothes that he went in on when he first went into the bank to receive the will. So he excitedly hands Monty this $20,000 that he can't possibly spend at like 10 minutes to midnight. So he goes in, and at first he's like screaming and he's upset. And then when he walks into the bankers, he's like, yeah, I messed up. Somehow I got this $20,000. And they bring him over to the desk to sign some documents. And at first, Edward, like the guy that's trying to help him, the executor, he's like, you still have 5 minutes left. It's like, how am I going to spend $20,000 in 5 minutes? So he's about to sign this, the paperwork to give the fortune over to the bankers. And then Angela is still in the building. She's closing out Monty's account. It's taking a long time because it's a lot of money. So she sees her fiance looking in at the office to see Monty sign his paperwork. He's on the outside looking in. And she's like, what's going on? And Cox is excited because he's about to make partner. So he calls her over. It's like, well, here's what's happening. Here's the thing that's been happening all along. So he tells her everything about why he was spending that money. And then she gets upset because it required Cox to lie and cheat for him to lose his inheritance. So she bursts into the office and she's screaming at him. She's like, Monty, don't sign that. They fooled you. They're cheating you. They're cheating you out of your money. And so the bankers fired her because she works for the bank. and Cox follows her, and he's like, yeah, we got you. You're going to be poor again. You're going to be destitute. We tricked you. And it's like, he's laughing about it. And so Monty hits him, and he's like, yeah, I'm going to sue you now because you hit me. And Monty's like, how would you like to settle out of court for $20,000? And Cox is like, no, I'm not stupid. I know what you're trying to do. And so, that's when Cox has met, well, actually, I think it was Angela. I can't remember. But one of them says, well, if you go through with this, you're going to need a lawyer. And he says, I can hire you as a lawyer for $20,000. She says, but I'm just a paralegal. I don't have a law degree. He says, take it as a retainer. You can go to school and you can get a law receipt. You can get a law degree. And she says, you need a receipt. So she starts writing a receipt for $20,000. So she, as a retainer, so that she can be his legal representation against her fiance. And it's funny because while all of this is going, this is happening all very fast. And while all of this is going, you can hear the clock ticking, and then you can hear the ding dong. It's one of those clocks that makes a long ding dong when it strokes an hour. Yeah. So then just as she's finishing signing the check, you can hear ding 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 ding. Ding, 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 ding. And so with the clock noises and the chimes going off, it really heightens the tension at the end of the movie. So she signs the check. She gives it to Monty. Monty gives it to the executor. Now he's flat broke and he won the contest. So
nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
that's at least a fun ending. That's like a very invigorating ending.
It's one of my favorite endings. I want to say that overall, it's not like the greatest movie. It's not the funniest movie. It's not the most probably not the most invigorating movie. But I will say that it's very well written. I really enjoy the way the movie is written. I enjoy the way the movie is acting. And for that reason, it's one of my favorite movies to watch. But at the same time, it's, as far as ending goes, I feel like it's one of the best endings to a movie, right? So it's very satisfying.
For sure. When
you never think that writing a document or signing a document would be exciting, but they make it look exciting the way they do it. It's fascinating.
For sure.
So, ladies and gentlemen, those are our favorite parts. If you have any favorite parts about Brewster's Million, why don't you drop us a line? You have my email address. You know what it is. It's in the show notes. So that's it for our favorite parts. Let's talk about the top 10 trivia.
So even though Hackensack Bulls are hosting the New York Yankees in the exhibition game, the Yankees are wearing their pinstriped home uniforms.
Yep. I'm not what you would call a sports fanatic, so I would never have noticed that. As I was watching, it's like, well, it looks right to me.
Yeah. And maybe they just visually looked more interesting or something,
Yeah, that could be it too.
Color, yeah.
Or they used the uniform that they figured that most people was familiar with, so that could be it too.
Yeah.
So Rick Moranis is not only an SCTV veteran, that stands for Second City Television, along with John Candy, but he worked with director Walter Hill in Streets of Fire, while Alan Autry was in Hill's Southern Comfort, and Peter Jason appeared in several Hill movies, including The Driver, The Long Riders, and years later, the pilot episode of Deadwood.
In a few scenes, a train passes through the outfield of the stadium where the Bulls play. In the 1930s and 1940s, that was a common occurrence at ballparks used by teams in the Texas leagues.
Yeah, that was another thing that I didn't mention about the movie, is that in the outfield that they played, they're supposed to be playing in New Jersey, but inexplicably, there is a train track that goes through the outfield. So they're trying to play a game, and next thing you know, a train is going through. And so that kind of heightens the humor of that situation. But what's actually funny about it is that later on, when he has his mayoral campaign, he uses the train schedule to advertise for his for campaigning for office of mayor. So there's like vote for none of the above on the train because he's campaigning. So that was funny. I think that even happened during his during the game with the Yankees where the train goes through the outfield. So when Brewster flies the team out of New York, the Statue of Liberty is surrounded by scaffolding. This was part of a large-scale conversion and restoration effort that took place between 1984 and 1986 to be finished before the statue's 100th anniversary in 1986, with the intention of making the icon last into the next century. I don't know if you ever remember seeing the Statue of Liberty covered in scaffolding.
No.
Yeah. It was a part of at least a couple of movies. So Brewster's Millions was one. One where it was actually part of the movie is a movie called Remo Williams, The Adventure Begins, where he's actually doing an action sequence at the Statue of Liberty and among the scaffolding that's around the Statue of Liberty. So there are probably a handful of movies that you'll watch that's set in New York around this time period that features the Statue of Liberty, like just surrounded by scaffolding.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. I'm going to look up pictures of that. That's really neat.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, in the earlier incarnations of Brewster's Millions, the hero who was required to spend only $1 million. And yep, that's what I saw in my version.
Yeah. But there's a thing with inflation. I wonder how much $1 million was in 1945. I'm going to look that up right now. I happen to have an inflation calculator opened up on the computer. So how much would that be? And I think, did he have a year to spend that?
No, he only had like 2 months.
Oh, 2 months. So
yeah,
adjusted for inflation, that's $17,474,444.44. So, so that's around $17 million is what he had to spend. 17 million too much. That's nothing. Brewster could do that in his sleep.
Yes.
Well, Brewster, the Richard Pryor Brewster could do that in his sleep because he had to spend $30 million in 1 month.
Yes.
So, the movie has several connections with Walter Hill's earlier film, 48 Hours. The bookie who lays down all the bets for Richard Pryor wears the same suit that Eddie Murphy wore. And I didn't mention this, but there's a part in the movie where Brewster's allowed to gamble a certain amount of money away. He can't gamble all of it, but there's a small percentage that he can gamble. So he puts like a bunch of money, like hundreds of thousands of dollars, all on long shots and, things that couldn't hope to win. And there was a game there was an unknown team against Notre Dame, and he bets on that unknown team to win. He puts that all in the bookie. The bookie leaves. He comes back angry at Brewster because Brewster won most of his bets. And now he has almost $2 million that he has to get rid of because he made all of these long shots. So the bar in which Montgomery and Spike started a brawl is called Torchy's, the same name of the bar that Murphy shook down in 48 Hours. This bar also appears in the film When a Stranger Calls, the Torchy's waitress in this film, who phones in the brawl to the police, is played by Margot Rose, who also appears in 48 Hours as a girlfriend as a character who we're told used to tend bar at Torchy's. The car driven by Brewster's personal photographer is a sky blue Cadillac convertible, the same type of Heap driven by Nick Nolte. Also, 48 Hours was originally intended to co-star Richard Pryor when it was in development at Columbia Pictures during the late 1970s and 1980s. So there's a lot of connection between these two films.
Yeah, that's really cool. Brewster's political party, None of the Above, or NOTA, is used in jurisdictions or organizations to give a voter who opposes all choices on a ballot a chance to indicate their disapproval. The underlying principle is the legitimate consent requires the ability to withhold consent, and allowing voters to withhold their consent in an election to office is just like voting no on all ballot questions.
That's interesting because we saw some of that in this election during the Democratic primaries. We saw that there were some people, there was actual campaigns going around to vote none of the above during the Democratic primary. So that's interesting. That's another reason I was like, there's a lot of parallel with this year's election cycle.
Yeah.
So Montgomery Brewster tries to explain what's happening to Spike Nolan and says, I'm going to act crazy for a little while, and it might seem like I am, but I'm not. This is a key plot point in William Shakespeare's Hamlet, when Hamlet says the same thing to his friend Horatio. In the very next scene where Brewster's talking to Coach Charlie Pegler blows him off saying, "Nighty night, sweet prince." Another homage to Hamlet, "Good night, sweet prince." So yeah,
I like that.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That was one of the things that I liked that, and I didn't notice it at first because I'm not a real Shakespeare dude. But there are people who read Shakespeare or who go to Shakespeare plays, and they would have caught this. And this is one of the things where I say that, I believe this film is well written. It's like it had a lot of thought going into the writing of this movie.
Yeah, I like those little call outs like that where, like you said, like only like a Shakespeare fan would notice that. Probably really enjoy that, you know?
Yeah.
Really enjoyed that, yeah. So although the movie involves a team named the Hackensack Bulls, no part of the movie was filmed anywhere in the state of New Jersey, much less in Hackensack.
Yeah.
That's really fun.
Yeah. It's a movie magic, as I like to say.
Yep. That's how we do. You know, I remember like we filmed The Chi here in Chicago, and so many choices sometimes are like taken like for a visual standpoint, but you'll see like on the Facebook groups are like, man, that's not really the West Side or whatever, you know? And it's like, yeah, what this part was prettier. So
yeah.
Just be quiet and enjoy what they're making for you.
Yeah, it's prettier, or it's cheaper, or it's, Canada had a better deal.
Like informs the story better. It's like better to see. Right. I'm trying to see somebody riding their bike like behind the sunset versus just like a regular street. Like, come on.
Yeah.
We're trying to entertain you here.
Right. So, when Miss Drake tabulates Monty's expense report, a list of things he buys to spend $30 million include, this is not everything, but this is some of the things that he's spending money on. A security guard, $1.16 million. Beer and wine, $2.1 million. 400 pounds of, quote, New York dirt for the Pitcher's Mound, $7,000. A Rupert Horn commemorative statue valued at $210,000. Nightclub rental, $610,000. A furniture deposit that Warren Cox withholds from Monty until the end, $20,000. An iceberg, $1 million. It's for search and retrieval of an iceberg. A rare biplane stamp, the one that I told you about earlier, $1.25 million, plus $1 for the postcard he mails to Granville and Baxter. Exercise videotapes, $3,000. Dental care for baseball team, presumably the Hackensack Bulls, $31,400. Tailored new Bulls uniforms, $27,000. 27 lifetime health spa memberships, again presumably for the Bulls, valued at $970,000. Office rental for his campaign, $1,600. Campaign worker salaries, $3 million. A separate salary for his campaign manager, $450,000 for 1 week.
Woo.
Renting a Rolls-Royce Corniche, I hope I pronounced that right, during his campaign, $1,800 for 1 week. A none of the above paint job for the car, $6,000. And restoring the car back to its original paint color, $12,000. So he knew what he was doing. He was on point.
Yeah.
There was one point where he buys Angela an expensive car. It's like an old style expensive car, and and she's not the type to accept gifts, but she accepts this one, and they're about to go and for a lunch. And when they get into the car, a guy rear ends them. The car is just parked there. They haven't moved anywhere, but somehow this guy rear ends them. So it's completely his fault. But Monty gets out, and here's the thing, right? Before they go, Monty's like, I'm not going to spend any money. I promise I'm not going to spend any. We're just going to go and we're going to eat lunch. I'm not going to spend any money, because he knows that she's offended by the way he spends money. So this guy rear ends them. They get out, and Monty's immediately like, you look hurt. You look crushed. You look like you got brain damage.
Yeah.
He's like, how about if I pay for the damage for your car and we settle this out of court for $2,000, right? And he writes him a check for $2,000. And the guy is like, once he realizes he's talking to Montgomery Brewster, he starts to play along. It's like, oh yeah, that's right. My head does hurt, right? And he starts leaning like he's crippled. Like it is totally his fault. And so Monty settles out of court for like $2,000 or something like that. That was another funny part. But see, now Angela is kind of offended by that, and so she kind of storms off. But it is like stuff like that where Monty is in the mode for getting rid of his money. And Eddie Murphy, well, not Eddie Murphy, but Richard Pryor was brilliant in that way.
Yeah, and it even gave me more ideas. Like, oh yeah, I definitely could get like a trainer, or I can get like a trainer for the community, these type of things. Like, oh yeah, dental care, like for sure. Like I get like all like the kids in the neighborhood, like teeth clean, like stuff like that. Yeah. So this is giving me some ideas, and it's actually, this trivia piece is relieving a little of the anxiety that I stressed from this film.
I'm glad I was able to help. I didn't realize it would have a therapeutic effect.
Yes. That's like, these are really great ideas he has, know?
Right.
Even like for like someone that's playing like minor league baseball, like what a gift to like feel like, wow, I have like a health spa membership for the rest of my life. Like,
yeah.
How nice is that? Dental care, like, hey, he's setting his folks up. I like that.
Right. Absolutely.
I like that.
So that's the end of the trivia. We're going to see what the critics thought. The critics gave it a 38%, not an 83, a 38%. Audience score is 56% on Rotten Tomatoes. So not very good scores. And on IMDb reviews, it's at 6.5 out of 10. So only slightly better on IMDb. So, and I can understand where some of the critics are coming from. It doesn't have like a huge rate of jokes per minute. It's like, you're not laughing constantly one joke after another. But I didn't think it was that type of film, but I think that was the type of film that a lot of people were expecting. So why don't you let us know what their first couple of critics were thinking about this film?
Yeah, so Mitchell Brope, I think, or Beaupre of Paste Magazine, sorry if I said your name wrong, that Brewster's Millions isn't a bucket of laughs is precisely the reason why it works. And as I think about that quote, I think that actually makes me think like, yeah, because even in the 1945 version, like the dancing girl I was telling you about, where I'm like, this is just not good. It's like, I should not be impressed. I actually shouldn't be impressed by this. And then like him making it even bigger is the comedy piece, and me not being impressed by this bigger production is the joke, know? And so that is what is the funny piece, regardless if I'm laughing or not.
Right. And to be honest, I think I only laughed out loud like maybe twice, and the other parts I was just amused by. So I feel like it did a pretty good job of keeping me amused and entertained, and just being overall satisfied with the story.
Yeah. It seems like, it seemed like as you're like sharing about it that you enjoyed it. You know?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I only have movies on this show that I like. I mean, every once in a while I'll drag along a movie that I probably didn't like, or I'll do a bonus episode on a movie I never saw before. And so there's a chance that I might like it or I might not like it. But this was, for me, it's a classic. Probably because I saw it when I was so young. I don't know, I probably saw it in 1980. 87 or 80. I can't remember. I think I did see this in theaters. I may have seen this in theaters. But regardless, I was like a teenager. And so I was easily impressionable, I guess.
Yeah. And then Matt Brunson from Film Frenzy, after a few million brewskis, Brewster's Million is passable fare as a late night viewing option, but those seeking genuine laughs would do well to look elsewhere. Ouch.
Yeah, it's a little owie,
tough,
but I can see where he's coming from, and I like his clever little writing. After a million brewskis, Brewster. Yeah, I see what you're doing, Matt Brunson.
Man, whatever, Matt. You know what, Matt? Whatever. Where's your film, Matt? Where's your film?
Well, I'm not going to be too hard on Matt, because I can kind of understand where that comes from. Because it's not like I just seen, not just seen. When it first came out, I watched Deadpool and Wolverine, and that. It's literally a laugh a minute. I mean, there are some parts where it's like where they're trying to tell the story. So it's not like they're not filling those parts with joke. But for most of the movie, it's just so many jokes. And then if you're watching all of the other like superhero movies, then that's also part of the jokes, which makes the movie even funnier. Yeah. But so this movie is not that. That's what it was. It's kind of hard to make that type of movie where you're constantly laughing.
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't seem like it's that type of film.
No, it's not. So Marty Mapes from Movie Habit wrote, compared to Which Way Is Up, Brewster's is a work of art. Even on its own merits, Brewster's is above average, which...
Thank you, Marty.
Yeah, I can respect that. And lastly, we have Alex Sandel from Juicy Cerebellum, a film of unrealized potential. And I can understand why somebody would say that, but like it could have been funnier. And I think this is like the general complaints that people have about the movie is like when they go to see somebody like Richard Pryor, they expect to laugh more often than this movie presents. But I thought it was just about right.
I keep getting this like political take where I'm like, you know what though? Is it funny when like you don't really have much and you say, hey, we're going to give you a bunch, but you can only do this with it. So you can't even like really like immediately fix what you would want with this money. And then you have to like, you know, like in the Richard Pryor version, then you have like these bankers fighting you back and forth because they don't want you to win. It's just like, really? Like, I feel like it's so relatable to today. It's like, damn, can I win something? You know, I got to go through all this to get to the end of this. And even then, you know, you guys are still fighting me. Like, where is the celebration of like every day? Right. And it also makes me even think of like humor, you know, just humor as like a medium, because I'm interested in humor. Like maybe it's not always laughing, you know, like as Matt would say, like looking for genuine laughs like all day, every day. You know, it's like even when you talk to comedians, you know, they don't want to necessarily be making you laugh all day, every day. That's not what they're there to do. So I feel like, you know, it's interesting as it like if it being a comedy, it's like, it's just, I don't know. It's just such a tough situation to be in. Cause you're like, wow, really? I got this money and then I got to do this with it. But you know, Richard, you know, Monty, they did a great job at handling it, you know, and it all worked out at the end, but wow.
Yeah.
You know, what a rush. What if he would have had a heart attack? All this stress.
It would have been a very different movie.
Yes.
So finally, Brewster's Million is, as of this recording, available on streaming. That's it for today. Next week, I'm joined by the eclectic Rob Fredette from Hodgepodge with Rob Fredette for the suspense classic, Enemy of the State. You can follow us on Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, and Threads. Don't forget that you can contact us like our earlier letter writer, Nikki. You can contact us at fanmail@backlickcinema.com. And Stephanie, do you have any additional plugs?
Just check out my podcast, noseyAF. We are coming back. I'm not sure when this episode releases, but we will be launching our 5th season in September. So I'm excited about that. And you could find all of that at noseyAF.com.
Okay, that's awesome. This episode would actually come out near the end of this month. So after they hear this episode, they can be geared up to listen to your episode.
Yes, please subscribe. Yes.
Absolutely. So one last time, if you like this show, then please help us grow by spreading the word about Backlook Cinema, the podcast. Believe me, it matters. And just like Stephanie said, please subscribe. And I know that you've enjoyed our guest, Stephanie, so please check out Nosy AF. And I've been Zoe Richardson. Be safe, share a movie from yesteryear with your family, hug your loved ones, and if you're going to be anything, be outstanding.